Breaking news, reports say the Baltimore Orioles have been sold. A look at who acquired the team for nearly $2 billion. House Democrats set to reveal their plan to tackle juvenile crime, the issues one Republican say they must focus on.
We'll be looking for more accountability.
Plus, we continue to investigate the troubled past of Maryland's DJS secretary, the concerning information coming to light. A teen convicted of rape and accused in a second case is allowed to attend a Baltimore City public school.
Kids need to feel safe in their schools.
Fox 45 News Project Baltimore pressing the governor on what he's doing to ensure your kids are safe. A Maryland mother is demanding justice after her daughter is murdered by an alleged gang member.
We want answers, and they need to provide them.
How a U.S. congressman is taking the fight to the federal level.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
We begin tonight with breaking news. Baltimore Orioles owner John Angelos has agreed to sell the stake in the team, according to a report from Puck News. The Angelos family has owned the Orioles more than 30 years. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Let's get right to Morgan Atsit with the latest on who's buying the team and what it could mean for the Orioles' future. Morgan.
Yes, of course, guys. Reports tonight that John Angelos has agreed to sell the Orioles to a private equity firm with multiple names attached, including Baltimore native and billionaire David Rubenstein. And Rubenstein would become the control person of the Orioles if or when the deal goes through. It has to be approved by Major League Baseball. In December, Rubenstein's name started to float around to purchase the Orioles if for sale. Puck News was the first to report the story and also mentions Cal Ripken Jr. as a name in the investment group making the purchase. The deal values the team at $1.725 billion. Peter Angelos purchased the Orioles in 1993 for $173 million. Spokespeople for the Orioles and John Angelos have not responded to my request for comments. This new ownership group will reportedly only take over 40% right now and will buy the rest following the death of Peter Angelos. Rubenstein has been linked to wanting to purchase a Major League Baseball team before with Washington, but a Nationals deal never happened.
Morgan, thank you. Orioles fans blowing up social media, as you can imagine, with their reactions to this news. Let's take a look at some of these right here. Orioles, no Angelos. The exclamation points just mean I need to read more because I have no idea what it means for the future. I think it could be good, though, so some optimism there. The best move the Orioles are making this season is changing ownership. Wonder if that gets us another 100 wins. We'll see. Y'all, this is great news for the Orioles fans, but revolutionary for investment in the Baltimore metro area, especially downtown. And last one here, poor Orioles fans, the new owners will be even worse. That's one opinion from a fan.
And Kai, this news comes just 1 month after the Maryland Stadium Authority and the State Board of Public Works approved a lease extension for the Baltimore Orioles at Camden Yards. A sale of the team would not impact the lease, however. At the time, reports said John Angelos called Governor Wes Moore to tell him the family did not intend to sell the team. Now, Fox 45 News reached out to the governor's office for comment on the sale agreement. We have not yet heard back. This is a developing story. Fox 45 News will continue to follow the news of the sale of the Orioles and bring you more details as they become available. You can follow along both on air and on our website, foxbaltimore.com. Maryland Democrats are set to unveil their juvenile crime plan tomorrow following months of calls for change from police, prosecutors, and victims across the state.
Some of our laws that have been passed recently do make it a little more challenging for us to hold them accountable, and that's sort of playing a role in some of the issues we're seeing at the moment.
These kids don't have consequences, and that's what makes me very angry.
Tonight, team coverage of the state's juvenile crime response as Jeff Abel looks into renewed concerns surrounding Department of Juvenile Services Secretary Vincent Schiraldi.
We begin with Keith Daniels and what could be included in tomorrow's crime plan. Keith?
Well, Kai and Mary were told those plans will add ways to build more accountability into the juvenile justice system as we wait to hear from one of Maryland's top Democrats.
It seems like a daily headline, juveniles involved in crime, whether a victim or offender. The issue top thought in Annapolis, with Maryland Democrats expected Wednesday to unveil their plan to address the juvenile crime crisis. Tonight, what that plan could include.
I feel good that we're in the right place.
Senate President Bill Ferguson, a Baltimore City Democrat, expected to release a package of bills targeting Maryland's juvenile justice system. Fox 45 News pressing the senator for a preview of the package.
It's a lot of what we've been talking about, focusing on the intake and accountability on the intake, looking at the process overall to make sure that the services are actually being delivered.
Overall, Ferguson said their strategy includes accountability for the whole system.
For the young people who certainly need more supports to divert or accountability for breaking the law, but also within the system to make sure that we're getting the right services at the right time so that kids are actually changing their behavior.
The Department of Juvenile Services has come under scrutiny over the last year or so as the number of incidents involving juveniles has increased, notably auto thefts and youths carrying guns. The intake process at the center of debate over kids who should be held there to face appropriate consequences, while others are simply released without charges. Ferguson saying DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi is aware of the changes that could come.
We've had conversations, a number of conversations with the department on specific issues here, but I would say this is really a legislative package.
Meanwhile,
we'll be looking for more accountability on all juveniles that are committing crimes.
Delegate Kathy Shalega, a Baltimore County Republican, on what she fears Ferguson's package won't include, notably legislation that would repeal the current Juvenile Interrogation Act, which requires juveniles to have an attorney present before they're questioned.
When a crime's been committed, juveniles will often just tell the truth. And the law enforcement and state's attorneys are then able to solve crimes. And so it's important that we're not holding up that process.
Well, in the weeks leading up to Ferguson's request, we heard from Governor Wes Moore lifting his voice, talking tough on youth crime, demanding consequences for youth offenders who pick up illegal guns and for repeat violent offenders. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. In addition to the state's juvenile crime concerns, Fox 45 News has reported on questions surrounding Juvenile Services Secretary Vincent Schiraldi and his Chief of Staff, Mark Schindler. During Schindler's time in Washington, D.C., our investigation uncovered several reports showing more than a dozen juveniles under supervision were either arrested for murder or killed. Schindler was dismissed in D.C., but has since come to Maryland. State Republicans now posing questions about DJS leadership.
Given the abundant evidence that the status quo is an abysmal failure, let's stand up and have a little bit of courage here to do the right thing for the kids and not simply bend to political nonsense.
Critics blame Schiraldi during his time as corrections commissioner in New York City. He oversaw Rikers Island Jail. Some leaders there say his leadership led to a lack of accountability. Tonight, Fox 45 News is uncovering more information from Secretary Schiraldi's past. Jeff Abel is live with new information that some lawmakers call troubling. Jeff?
Well, we have spent weeks digging into Schiraldi's past and connecting the dots, which all appear to lead to some of the same recurring issues. In Annapolis today, some of those who make policy are questioning the policies of Vincent Schiraldi.
These type of serious alarming situations that we're hearing about, they can't be overlooked.
Maryland's Juvenile Services Secretary, who has endorsed the abolishment of youth prisons, has been under the microscope lately as problems in his professional past have surfaced. When he was director of juvenile corrections in D.C. 15 years ago, he admitted to investigators that he instructed officers to drive 3 juvenile offenders out of this maximum security lockup in Laurel to his Washington home for an afternoon cookout. During that event, one of the juveniles escaped out of his basement door and wasn't recaptured for 22 days. And it appears it may not have been the only time offenders checked into the facility and checked out. A year before that cookout, the Washington Times reports about a lawsuit accusing a city official in Washington of checking a 16-year-old out of the same facility. According to the Times, the officials signed the boy out of the Oak Hill Youth Center and brought him to their home in Northwest Washington, where he spent the night. The lawsuit alleges improper activity later took place, but the lawsuit was eventually thrown out. Schiraldi was never accused of abusing offenders, but as director, his policies have come under fire.
I've got over almost 30 years in law enforcement, and the reality is juvenile crime and the way that we are failing to handle these at-risk children is disturbing and alarming.
After reviewing Schiraldi's past, Senator William Folden believes lawmakers should keep close watch on the troubled agency.
Doing better is no longer allowing Secretary Schiraldi to be in a position that there's a lack of accountability apparently amongst his own leadership and himself.
We did reach out to DJS today, where his spokesman says he cannot comment on any specific case, but insists the agency is now working hard to provide decent, humane, and rehabilitative experiences for youth. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. That brings us to our question of the day. Should state lawmakers hold a hearing to investigate DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi? 96% of those who voted say yes. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
Former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby was back in court for her federal trial today on the heels of bombshell testimony from her ex-husband, City Council President Nick Mosby. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost was in Greenbelt today. She looks into how some are questioning Nick Mosby's fitness to lead the Baltimore City Council following this controversial testimony.
The jury heard some brief testimony today, but really what came out in court surrounding Nick Mosby's testimony and his previous financial problems remains one of the biggest headlines. And now the spotlight is turning to the City Council president's future. Marilyn Mosby walking side by side into court with her defense attorney.
Good morning, Ms. Mosby. Good morning. You ready for this to be over?
As day 6 of testimony in her mortgage fraud trial gets underway. Lingering questions about her ex-husband Nick Mosby's testimony, however, stalled most of the morning's movement. Prosecutors seeking to subpoena Marilyn Mosby's previous defense team, telling the judge FBI agents were sent to Los Angeles and Chicago Monday to try and bring them to Maryland, forcing them to testify about a meeting they had with Nick Mosby in March of 2022. Ultimately, Judge Grigsby not allowing that to happen. But questions surrounding Nick Mosby and his financial past remain. Prosecutors claim Baltimore City Council President Nick Mosby, who also chairs the city spending board, repeatedly committed perjury on tax forms dating back nearly a decade, alleging in 2014 Nick claimed $21,000 in charitable donations, the same year when he was more than $18,000 behind in mortgage payments, had his car repossessed. In 2015, prosecutors also claim Nick donated $15,000 to charity while he was $9,600 behind on mortgage payments, racking up tens of thousands of dollars in debt on back taxes. Nick's alleged fraudulent tax issues not allowed to be discussed in front of the jury, but the jury did hear Nick Mosby admit to funneling over $1,000 worth of clothing expenses through his business. These financial problems come on the heels of Nick Mosby telling the jury he kept his ballooning tax debt a secret from his wife, often stashing mail in garbage bags, keeping piles on the ground and in canvas bags. Nick also under oath admitting to lying to the public about taking care of that $45,000 tax lien simply because he did not want Marilyn to find out.
Makes his credibility even worse if it's possible to think it was good in the first place.
Political analyst John Dede argues Nick's financial mismanagement raises serious questions about his ability to lead moving forward.
And I think he's got to do a lot of thinking about running and leaving in a situation where he ends up looking worse.
While the city council president claims he's running for re-election, online records show he is yet to officially file. And the latest campaign finance records show Mosby has $183,000 in his campaign coffers, while his biggest challenger, City Councilman Zeke Cohen, has more than $530,000 in the bank. Shannon Sneed, another candidate seeking to unseat Nick, has just under $170,000.
You need $200 million to erase stuff like that. And I think that voters will look at it and say, we want to continue the Mosby drama. All these things coming out create an extreme increase of a lack of trust.
The candidate filing deadline, February 9th. The city council president's office tells Fox 45 News he intends to file in the coming days. If that happens, Dede argues, the information about Nick Mosby's financial fumbles in the past could pose serious hurdles for him to overcome with voters. The defense says between now and Wednesday morning, they will decide whether Marilyn Mosby will testify. Leaving court Tuesday. Will you testify tomorrow? Silence from the defense as testimony in Marilyn Mosby's mortgage fraud trial continues to drag on.
At this point, Marilyn Mosby and her defense team have just a few hours left to make that decision about whether she will take the stand. But remember, she did not testify in her previous perjury trial in November. In Greenbelt, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Yesterday, we asked you, given Nick Mosby's testimony, should he continue to be Baltimore City Council president? 80% of those who voted said no. Fox 45 News will continue to follow the latest developments in federal court. Head to foxbaltimore.com for our complete coverage on the Mosby trial.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, a Republican state delegate introducing a new bill tomorrow that would ban trans athletes from high school girls' sports. How she's responding to critics calling the legislation discriminatory. A teenager now facing more than a dozen charges in connection with an attack in Butchers Hill last year. Why the victim is questioning the timeline of those charges and why she says she feels state leaders have failed her.
I am tracking a weak little weather maker for your Wednesday. Coming up tonight on Fox 45 News at 10, I will break down our rain and snow chances for the week ahead.
Project Baltimore is pressing the governor for answers about their investigation showing a convicted rapist was allowed to attend a Baltimore City school. What Governor Moore says he's doing about it. Governor Wes Moore says he's taking a closer look at state laws that allowed a 15-year-old convicted rapist to attend a Baltimore City high school.
Project Baltimore's Chris Pass broke this story last week, and as Chris explains, it came as a shock to many, including some lawmakers.
The 15-year-old in this case has already admitted to one rape and currently faces similar charges in a second case. Yet he was allowed to attend a Maryland public school without parents or students being alerted.
People need to feel safe in their communities, and kids need to feel safe in their schools.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore and other state leaders responding to a Project Baltimore investigation that found a 15-year-old rapist attending Patterson High School in Baltimore City.
We're going to need to get more information about what happened here.
State Delegate Luke Clippinger chairs the House Judiciary Committee and represents Baltimore City.
Starting to talk to people, both at the schools and the Department of Juvenile Services, to get that information so that we can decide what to do and what next steps to take.
Project Baltimore is not identifying the student because he's a juvenile, but records show last month he entered a plea in Harford County to a second-degree rape charge involving a 3-year-old relative. He was given probation and counseling while ordered to have no unsupervised contact with children under 15. He was then allowed to return to Patterson High School, and because he's a juvenile, parents and students were not alerted. The victim's mother, who we are not identifying, says a rapist should not have been allowed back in school.
Teachers can't be everywhere. Parents need to know in order to protect their children.
This mother agrees. She says the Patterson student victimized her daughter too.
You knew what he did. He confessed, and then you agreed to put him back in school? Like, what were you thinking?
The second case allegedly occurred in Baltimore County in April 2022. In that case, the Patterson student is facing multiple charges, including second-degree rape. The alleged victim was 2 years old at the time. That's two mothers who say the same 15-year-old victimized their daughters and was allowed to attend class inside a public school with nearly 1,300 students. Under state law, a juvenile sex offender who is not on the sex offender registry cannot be barred from attending school in person, except in certain cases. Baltimore City Schools told us, in order to remove the student from the school, the district had to follow specific legal protocols and provide specific evidence of an imminent threat of serious harm to the health and safety of other students and staff.
I would say we're going to be working closely with the presiding officers and the General Assembly.
Governor Wes Moore tells Project Baltimore he's looking into those laws.
As we're finding out more information about this specific situation, we want to make sure that the policies and the laws are laws that are in place that are making sure that people are safe in their communities and that kids are safe in their schools.
Project Baltimore has reached out to the Department of Juvenile Services. It's unclear if DJS knew about the second case in Baltimore County when it recommended probation, which allowed the teen back in school. We took our questions straight to the head of DJS. We'll show you what happened Wednesday on Fox 45 News at 10. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
The Maryland State Department of Education provided a statement saying, in part, it is essential for local school systems to ensure safe and secure learning environments for all students in Maryland public schools. School systems may remove a student from the regular school environment if it is determined they pose a serious threat of imminent harm to the school or classmates. However, since those decisions can be appealed to the state board, we have no further comment on this specific matter.
2 Baltimore County employees are now acting as lead administrators at Pikesville High School while BCPS investigates a recording of disturbing remarks allegedly made by the school's principal. Superintendent Miriam Rogers gave an update.
Our top priority has been providing direct support to our students and staff, creating a safe space for them to process their thoughts and feelings, given the national and local attention this incident has garnered.
The superintendent did not provide any updates on the investigation itself. For our full reporting on the story, head to foxbaltimore.com. Project Baltimore wants to hear from you. Do you have a story to share about your child's education or concern you'd like our team to investigate? Call the tip line on your screen or send an email to projectbaltimore@foxbaltimore.com. You can also find us on social media.
There are new calls from lawmakers to impose term limits here on Capitol Hill. I'm Kayla Gaskins, and coming up, we'll take a look at the proposed changes.
And as we wrap up the month of January tomorrow, here's a look back at how much snow we've picked up so far this past month. We've actually picked up an above average amount with just over 9 inches. Typically during the month of January, we see closer to 6.5. Now, I will explain why our snow chances look pretty limited in the week ahead in just a couple of minutes on Fox 45 News at 10.
All right, Amy, we're not upset by limited snow chances. And let's take a look right now, a live look at Camden Yards, as Orioles owner John Angelos is reportedly selling the team. Fox 45 will continue to update this story. Back in a moment. Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski is launching a congressional campaign in Maryland's 2nd District. This comes as Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger announces that he won't seek re-election. Olszewski has been the Baltimore County Executive since 2018.
The debate over term limits intensifies on Capitol Hill tonight. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins explains why some members of Congress are calling for change.
The idea of congressional term limits has been a contentious one among lawmakers in Washington over the years. And while it's been proposed by both Republicans and Democrats in the past, a plan has recently been introduced by House Democrat Ro Khanna of California.
The American people on both sides are frustrated by the corruption in Washington. We need real change.
The reform plan calls for 12-year term limits. The idea already popular among Americans. A Pew Research survey from last July shows 87% are in favor of congressional term limits, with the vast majority of both parties in support.
We need fresh blood, fresh people, fresh ideas.
Democratic Congressman David Trone, who's a co-sponsor of the plan and currently running for Senate in Maryland, says he's focused on reforming how Washington operates.
We can't have someone there for 30, 40 years in the same seat, 85 years old and running for re-election. Is that crazy? That's crazy.
In addition to congressional term limits, both Trone and Khanna are calling for 18-year limits and regular appointments of Supreme Court justices.
There's an appetite for the Supreme Court to change. What we're trying to do is get the dialogue started.
While many agree change is needed in Washington, some experts and lawmakers are concerned term limits could mean a less experienced government and could lead to more polarization in politics. On Capitol Hill, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
And that brings us to our national question of the day. Do you think there should be term limits for members of Congress? 97% of people who voted say yes. Make your voice heard by going to foxbaltimore.com/vote and click on the Pulse tab.
Criticism for the Maryland justice system ahead of a Baltimore man sentencing in federal court. Why the U.S. Attorney's Office for Maryland says the justice system is falling short.
We want answers, and they need to provide them.
Authorities say an MS-13 gang member killed her daughter in 2022. Now a mother is demanding justice. How a congressman is taking the fight to the federal level. We're following three big stories at 10:30. Federal lawmakers are pushing for answers regarding the 2022 murder of a Maryland woman. Why one Republican congressman says the suspect should never have been in the country, and the changes he wants to see from the Biden administration.
The U.S. Attorney for Maryland's office claims defendants aren't being held accountable. Why they say one man's case points to a larger issue within the state court system.
A 14-year-old faces more than a dozen charges following an assault and carjacking in Butchers Hill, nearly 3 months after the attack. We begin there. The victim is raising questions about the timing of the new charges after she was originally told nothing would happen to her alleged attackers.
FOX45's Rebecca Pryor has the update.
The bruises, they did take actually a few weeks to go away.
3 months after a violent attack caught on camera in Butchers Hill, the victim,
they were pretty big,
says the bruises finally faded. Her head injury has healed, and the car police say her attackers attempted to steal safe at home. But Julie fears her sense of security.
It's hard walking sometimes. If someone's behind me, I get really nervous.
Will never be the same.
They were just so focused on the robbery, and for me, that wasn't the hardest part. It was, the assault and almost losing my car and, getting punched and just the fear and all of that.
Even as the charges for one of her accused attackers apparently are changing.
At the end of November, I was told that the 14-year-old was being charged with just the robbery, not the assault or attempted car theft or anything.
Just this week, without any other communication or conversations, Julie receiving this letter from the state's attorney's office, now listing 11 additional charges for the 14-year-old suspect in her case, including multiple counts of assault and theft.
I think they've pretty much put every possible charge on there.
Still awaiting an explanation, Julie believes the juvenile justice system felt pressured to reassess the case.
I sat on judicial proceedings for 14 of my 16 years in the Senate. We would have been howling right now.
It does a disservice to those young people when they are immediately released, because it sends the message to them that this is for play.
But only after an outpouring of outrage from both city and state leaders, causing Julie to question, what about the cases that aren't brought to light?
And I think about if mine hadn't have been on camera the way it was, I wouldn't be getting this much attention.
And what about the 12-year-old suspect?
I know he's attached to my case, but they couldn't really tell me anything else.
Who police say has already been caught stealing more than a dozen other cars across the state.
That was hard too for me, because I felt like if there had been interventions or something put in place earlier, maybe this wouldn't have happened to me, and maybe, these juveniles would be in a better place.
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Police say a 36-year-old man has died following a shooting this afternoon on Mosby Avenue. That's in North Baltimore. Fox 45 News is on the scene this afternoon. Police say the man was taken to the hospital around 4:30 and pronounced dead a short time later. Anyone with information on potential suspects is asked to call Metro Crime Stoppers at the number on your screen.
The U.S. Attorney's Office for Maryland is calling out the state justice system ahead of a Baltimore man's sentencing in federal court. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell looks into the man's deep criminal history and why attorneys say he doesn't deserve any lenience.
This is the document prepared by U.S. Attorney for Maryland Eric Barron's office ahead of David Lee Bradby's February sentencing. Just last month, Bradby pleaded guilty to repeatedly sending life-threatening text messages to a woman in West Virginia back in 2022. A screenshot of that message included in court documents shows images of the KKK, along with threats to kill the woman and rape her family. Barron's office recommending a more severe sentence, then calling out the state, writing, Bradby's criminal record reflects what too often seems to be the disposition of cases in the state justice system, particularly within the Baltimore City courts. That is, sentences are suspended. There is little to no consequence for violations of release or parole, and as a consequence, it appears that many offenders have little to no regard for contact with the judicial system.
Good morning.
Since taking office, both Barron and Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates have vowed to better hold offenders accountable as part of the city's overall crime fight. Bradby's case, Barron's office says, another example of the state falling short. This document detailing Bradby's criminal history, which dates back more than a decade, including a 2012 assault conviction for which he received probation, a 2018 burglary conviction for which all 10 years of his sentence was suspended, a 2019 possession of a deadly weapon, and a 2021 case that's still pending trial, where Bradby is accused of sexual contact, assault, and again, electronic harassment. Bradby, investigators say, then going on to target this woman in West Virginia the following year. Barron's office writing, Bradby does not deserve excessive leniency from this court. Indeed, the lenience he has received in other cases failed to correct his behavior. Perhaps, hopefully, a more severe sentence in this case will do so. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
And Barron's office is requesting a sentence of 2.5 to 3 years with credit for time served. David Lee Bradby is scheduled back in court for sentencing next Wednesday.
Governor Moore and other state lawmakers are pushing legislation that would limit early release for some convicted sex offenders. People such as Jason Billingsley. He was released from prison on good behavior in 2022. Less than a year later, Billingsley was charged in the murder of Baltimore Tech CEO Pavel Lapierre. Her family and lawmakers support stronger limitations on when inmates can earn what's known as diminution credits to qualify for early release.
All of our extended families are victims. The employees of EcoMap Technologies, Pavel's friends and co-workers, and other members of the Baltimore tech community ecosystem are victims. The entire city of Baltimore was held hostage, and as a result is also a victim.
one example, one time is one time too many. We want to make sure that we put laws in place that will keep all the citizens protected.
You heard from Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates just now. He and Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Brayboy are calling for stronger laws surrounding what constitutes a gang in Maryland. They want to crack down on young people who commit crime, whether it's within an organized group or a loosely affiliated crew.
And we have seen the impact of gang violence in Maryland for years, including the murder of 20-year-old Kayla Hamilton in 2022. The suspect is a member of MS-13. Tonight, one congressman is subpoenaing the Department of Health and Human Services for information on the accused killer. Fox 45's Jessica Babb has the update.
Date after date. In this letter from Representative Jim Jordan, there's a timeline of requests. Now, months later, with unanswered questions, he's issuing a subpoena to the Department of Health and Human Services.
We know that Border Patrol does not specifically check the home country criminal history of aliens it encounters at the border. We know that the Biden administration's open border policies have led directly to the deaths of Noah Rodriguez and Kayla Hamilton.
Outspoken about border policies, for more than 6 months, Representative Jordan says the U.S. House Judiciary Committee has been asking HHS about data and policies related to the placement of unaccompanied alien children, sponsor vetting, and UACs that have criminal and gang affiliations.
We want answers, and they need to provide them.
This after 20-year-old Kayla Hamilton was raped and killed in her home in Aberdeen in 2022.
I want her to be remembered as the happy and loving child.
The suspect accused was an unaccompanied alien child with ties to the MS-13 gang in El Salvador. Kayla's mother is now suing the Department of Homeland Security and HHS, saying they failed her daughter.
They should not have allowed this young man to matriculate in the United States.
As lawmakers have been investigating, in a letter sent this month, Representative Jordan says after HHS officials were unable to answer their questions last June, the Judiciary Committee was told the information would be provided. But Jordan says the only information they received was, quote, a series of generalized statements that partially touched on the committee's requests. After additional requests last November, Jordan says HHS produced, quote, nothing of substance. Now he's hoping he can get those answers with the subpoena.